Peace, peace. Come on in, y'all. Come on in, come on in. Come on in, come on in. Peace, what's happening, West Side? TR Grand Risings. Cherokee, what's happening? Peace, peace. Boy. Fake BIA propaganda in front of your face, all right? We all done seen it, floating around TikTok. Grand Risings, Lola. Peace, peace. We done all seen the fake propaganda. The information hitting too hard, so they gotta grab what's happening. Grand Risings before all. The fake propaganda, boy. The information is starting to get too potent that they gotta get their industry agents to re-brainwash the kids. Shit cooling. They gotta get their puppets to re-indoctrinate the kids, because too much information is going out here about who the real indigenous people and the real first people of America is. And it's not just him, but Speed as well too. There's another streamer called Speed. Speed did the same thing, right? And they doing this because they know a lot of kids follow their page, right? See, I always told y'all that they go after the kids. So there's a lot of kids that follow these people, ironically, and I feel like kids shouldn't be following these streamers because they be doing weird shit on their streams. But, you know, can't tell everybody how to parent their kids. But there's a lot of propaganda going on to reinforce the false narrative because too many people starting to wake up. What's happening, Nini? Peace. Grand Risings, Kevin. What's happening? Shout out to everybody that's in here. Thank y'all for the likes and love, the gifts. So this is why history is so important. Understanding and studying history is so important. So we about to get back to it. All right, we about to get back to our scheduled programs. He said he's African. I'm not surprised he did this. Nah, facts. I ain't surprised either. But, you know, when you see the trolls and you see the agents, you got to call them out. You know, when you see the trolls, you see the agents, you got to call them out. Got to call them out. Got to bring awareness to it every time. Gotta bring awareness to it. What's happening, E-Flow? Peace. I be walking around with my feathers in, making it known. Now, facts. Shit's about to be fall time, so it's time for me to break out my turbans. You feel me? It's time for me to break out my turbans with my feathers on it. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't really wear my turbans in the summertime. You know, it's kind of hot. And I got locks, so. But it's time for me to start bringing them back out, throw the feather in it. Real indigenous like. What's happening, Libra? Peace. Red Lion was good. So we're going to dive back into this history, though, here in a second. We're going to dive back into the history, refresh everybody's mind. Cushion coffee in the morning. Oh, shit. I got something to show y'all before we get started. Hold on. All right. What's happening, C3? He said your people wore turbans every day. Well, I don't think you know who my people is, but I appreciate you for trying. So, I got something for y'all, for all my supporters and everybody like that. If y'all are interested in purchasing Cushion Coffee hydro mug, right? 32 ounces for those who like to exercise and everything like that, right? It's a hydro jug, 32 ounces. Keep everything cold for 24 hours. But the beautiful thing about it is Cushion Coffee in the morning. Roll it if you got it, you feel me? So every time you sip your little drink, you can let everybody know what it is, Cushion Coffee in the morning. Support your boy, Signs Up for the Conscious Mind. So if y'all want to get this, holler at me inside my inbox. and I'll let y'all know how y'all can get this right here. I tried to put it on side the TikTok shop, but you know, TikTok don't like me, so I couldn't put it on the TikTok shop, so we're gonna have to do it one-on-one. So, you know, we getting hydro jugs in here for cushion coffee. You know, you put your coffee in it, your tea in it, water, you know, your wine. Hopefully y'all ain't drinking 32 ounces of wine, but you know, if y'all are, maybe we need to talk about something other than that. But it's a nice little traveler's thing, and I'm also still working on the coffee mugs, cushion coffee. So I haven't forgot about that. So I'm still working on the coffee mugs for everybody. You know, so cushion coffee in the morning, y'all already know how we get down. So I just wanted to show y'all that. So if y'all interested in that, just hit me in my inbox, and I'll let y'all know how y'all can grab that 32-ounce jug or, you know, cushion coffee mug. Shit, I appreciate that, C3. Man, just trying to, you know, just trying to spread the channel, spread the information, spread the knowledge. You know how we do. You know. He said you need both. I got you. I got you, C3. How much? The coffee mugs would be like $5. You know, about $5, $6. It ain't gonna be too much. But this 32 ouncer gonna have to be about, I say about 10, 15, maybe 20. I'm not sure. I'm still doing price checks because I'm trying to get a good deal for everybody. You know what I'm saying? I ain't trying to bust nobody head or nothing like that, like some of these folks on here do. You know, I want it to be affordable. You know, great products, good everything, just affordable. So the coffee mugs might be $5, $6, and the traveler mug might be 10, 15. You know, it all depends on how shipping is, right? If shipping is higher, then I probably drop the price a little bit lower. You know what I'm saying? It just all depends on how I can get the shipping out. But I'll let y'all know though. I'll let y'all know. Just stay tuned. I'll let y'all know about it. TR said I'll take a set. Yeah, I got y'all. Hopefully I have everything ready to go by the end of this week though. So when I say I keep y'all posted. So let's get into these gems real quick, man. Let's get into these gems. So we left off teaching about Sephardics, Moors, Ashkenaz, YT Christians, Octoroons, you know what I'm saying, inside these books called Blackness in Latin America, in the Caribbeans, and beyond red and black. Okay. So we talked about it. I still got the shirts working. I still got the shirts working. I haven't forgot about the shirts, TR. I still got those working. You know, I got shirts. I'm working on shirts, coffee mugs, hydro jugs. I'm still planning a documentary for sometime next year. And I'm working on another book to be dropped on Halloween. Right, so I'm working on another book as well, and I'm gonna drop it on Halloween. I'm also looking into making the books into hard copies for y'all as well too. So again, just stay tuned. But this book that I'm gonna be dropping on Halloween, you know, it's Halloween dealing with spirits and stuff. So y'all know we're gonna have to get real Gnostic with this book. So this book that I'm working on gonna be Reclaiming Our Consciousness Part 3, which is gonna dive into so-called angels, demons, spirituality, frequencies, and stuff like that even more. Peace, peace, Mother Nurture, Grand Risings. You said you want a rolling tray? I ain't never think about rolling trays. I think about it. I see what I could do. I see what I could do. So, one reason why I'm bringing up Sephardic and Moors is because I wanted to show y'all this. Because when they say that we grabbed the Africans from West Africa, right? When they say that we grabbed Africans from West Africa, I want y'all to understand that Senegal, which is in West Africa, isn't what you think it is, right? The name Senegal comes from the Zanaga Berbers of Mauritania and northern Senegal. So even when they was taking so-called Africans from West Africa, they were still taking Berbers, Mauritanians, Moors. So again, these wasn't regular so-called Africans that they was taking, right? These were specific people, specific kingdoms, specific tribes. You know what I'm saying? So you get the name synagogue from the Zanaga Berbers of Mauritania. So the name synagogue appears to be derived from that of the Zanaga Berbers, right? Naga, N-A-G-A, Naga, Zinaga, Naga, right? Naga Berbers of Mauritania and northern Senegal. About 1040, Zanaga Berbers established a Muslim fortified religious retreat, perhaps on an island in the river. This became the base of the Almoravids, who converted the Tukalor and conquered Morocco and crossed into Spain. The Almoravids attacked on the Sanuki Empire of Ghana and contribute to empire's eventual decline. All right. So even when they say they grab so-called Africans from West Africa, and they're just simply talking about a group of Berbers and Moors who was living in Senegal, Gambia at this time, right? Peace, Fulanius. So peace, y'all, peace. So, synagogue, right? Synagogue. As you can see, the mosque, right? So what I just read you is not far-fetched, right? They just said that the word synagogue come from the Zanaga Berbers, because the Zanaga Berbers also controlled and lived in Senegal. And you can tell because if you go to synagogue, you will still find mosque and Berbers there today. Why is that important? Because when you look at the Louisiana Creole flag, you have synagogue's flag right there, meaning Berbers, right? Meaning Berbers. And these weren't no random Moors, and ain't no Al Moroccan or no Zanaga, Naga, Berbers, right? Moors. And this is what the Louisiana Creole flag shows you, right? It shows you Moors and American Indians coming together, giving you Louisiana Creole culture. It's inside the flag. It's in a lot of people's flags, not just Louisiana Creole, but also in a lot of other states as well too. Grand Rise, what's happening? GMB, Children 3, what's happening? So just to break down the flag one more time for you all, when you talk about Louisiana Creoles, so the blue with the white fleur-de-lis is for the Royal France, or the Bourbon flag as they call it, right? They call it the Bourbon flag, or it's for the Royal Banner of France, meaning Huguenots. Huguenots were also Moors and Sephardic Jews, okay? So you have that right there, top left part of the Louisiana Creole flag. What's happening, District Soldier? Peace, peace. Shout out to everybody that's coming in, man. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. We in here early with it. Okay. So, still breaking it down. So the next flag, as you see, is the synagogue flag right next to the fleur-de-lis flag, right? Moors, Berbers again, right? You have the Mali flag, right? As you can tell, right? The Mali flag, You still got the Berber infrastructure there, right? What you call Moors and Sephardics. When you go to Mali and you talk about Mansa Musa, people don't know that Mansa Musa and all them, or Mali Empire, was an empire of Moors and Sephardic, Sephardites, right? Their buildings are still up still to this day, right? And then, last but not least, you have the Spanish flag, right? Which is what you have right here with the red and yellow castle, right? So the white cross in the middle of the flag is for American Indians. So this flag literally tells you that there's a community of American Indians, Sephardic Jews, and Moors that came together to create this Creole community of Louisiana. And not just Louisiana, but Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina as well too. A lot of other places have Creole culture, which is this shit right here. Excuse me, I don't mean this shit, but this right here, Creole culture. Peace, Dallas. It's Creole culture. Okay, Creole culture. This is what it is. This is really what it is, right? I like how there's an AI warning on your live. Well, that's not an AI warning. That's me putting AI on my videos, right? I do that myself. I'm gonna need y'all to really start understanding how TikTok works. But anyways, so these are four Moorish Sephardic flags, which lets you know the culture. Okay. With French or Huguenot being the basis of this, right? Hence why when you go to Louisiana, when you go to Haiti, when you go to these places, French is the base of the language. Okay. And Zanaga, right? A lot of Sephardic Jewish words, right? Judo, Spanish, a lot of that mixed in together to give you the language. Okay, but there's other Creole cultures out here, but the basis of it is always American Indians, Moors, and Sephardics coming together, which gives you the birth of the Creole culture, believe it or not. We read this. So when we crack these books open, it look more like this. Okay. When we crack these books open, it look more like this. This is very important to understand. Okay. It's very important to understand. Very important to understand. Anybody got any questions before we crack open these books real quick? Any questions, feel free to ask before we crack it open. What's happening, Max Jones? Peace. Thank y'all for the gifts, man. I appreciate that. What's happening, Gerbil? Peace. Appreciate y'all. What's happening, Jaguar? Peace. Now, any questions? So if you want to know, honestly, if you want to know how people were sounding back then, go listen to Creole people. Well, a lot of us is Creole. We just don't know we Creole, right? Creole is more than just Haiti and Louisiana, right? You got Georgia Creoles, Florida Creoles, South Carolina Creoles, Alabama Creoles, Mississippi Creoles. You got Chicago Creoles, right? The whole Southeast and the West Indies is the birth of the Creole culture, or what you call Maroon, right? You also call this culture Maroon culture, right? What's happening, Yanni? Believe it or not, Creole culture and Maroon culture is same shit, same thing, right? Same thing. So there was more than just one or two Maroon communities, right? You had them in, Jamaica, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Florida. When we say Florida, that of course applies to Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, and all of that, because we know what little Florida was at this time. All of that was Creole culture, but it was a reason why they banned the South from their Creole culture, right? They banned a lot of us from Creole culture. If you go do your research, Georgia got banned, Florida got banned, South Carolina got banned. A lot of these different places got banned from teaching Creole history, language, and information as well too. They stopped a lot of our dances, traditions, drums, and everything like that. Shit, we couldn't even do our spiritual practice at a point in time. Okay, so they enacted a ban on all Creoles. They only stopped us from speaking it, right, and other things. So this is why a lot of our people don't have the Creole vocabulary anymore. Some of us do, some of us don't, right? Some of us just got dialect and an accent when we talk, right? So peep game, peep game, peep game, peep game. All right. All right. He said, thank you for honoring our culture. I mean, shit, I'm part Creole myself. I mean, I wouldn't even say part Creole. Like, a lot of us are Creole today. We just don't know it. Because, you know, it got erased. You know, Texas, Louisiana, like I said, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, Chicago. Right? A lot of these places are Creole states. Right? And a lot of it got banned. But if you are Creole, then understand that your lineage is Latinos, and we already learned what Latino is, right? Sephardic Jews, Moors, and American Indians, which is the same mixture that give you Maroons as well too, or what people call Afro-Indigenous people, right? Afro meaning Afrique, meaning the Roman province, meaning North Africans and Iberians, Afrique, Africa, Afro. So they're literally telling you that these indigenous people, when they say Afro-Indigenous, they literally telling you that these indigenous people have also Sephardic and Moorish lineage, right? So peep game, peep game, peep game. So let's get into the book. Let's get into the book. All right. So we diving back into the Black Americas and the African diaspora, because we just learned that the African diaspora is really North Africans. Okay. So picking up where we left off with, right? What's that in Walk on Water? Peace, peace. Pick it up where we left off with, right? 216, what's happening? So it says, in the 10th century, you know, Black African fighters were a significant part of the conquering army of North African Moors. By the 11th and 12th centuries and onto the 16th century, images of Black Africans were to be found in monumental arts and architecture, Christian iconography, heraldic shields, and other aesthetics forms throughout the Western Europe. Indeed, imagery of Africans is pervasive in Europe between the 4th and 14th century. Representations of Africans in many postures and guises occur in connections with religious ideology involving the land of Ethiopia, the coming of the Magi, the realm and persons of Prester John, the Queen of Sheba, Queen Sheba, Saint Maurice, and the meaning of Old Testament legendary histories and prophecies about darkness and light. All come from these Moors. All right, all come from these Moors. By the middle of the late 15th century, the religious imagery of blacks in Europe acquiesces to the power politics of the Iberian kingdoms. The African American historian Leslie Rowe is quite clear about the European correspondence that developed as Iberians recognized an inversion of imagery. Black African warriors to be feared on one side, and Black Africans as being the conquered and enslaved on the other side. Okay? So during the centuries of bitter struggle, the Black African had became known to the Christians essentially as a soldier fighting for the Moors or a slave laborer. Okay? As a slave laborer. The Portuguese therefore looked upon blacks as logical answers to their problems for a cheap source of labor after 1250, and as early as 1258, Moorish traders appeared at the fairs of Godamares or northern Portugal, offering sub-Saharan Africans for sale. That's where you get the whole black people selling black people from, right? Route is clear about Hispanic views of black people during the period of the Christian reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula territories and subsequent expulsion of Moors, Jews, and non-Christian blacks was completed between 1492 to 1502. Ultimately, the white Christians of Spain, the captives of Negre in the Iberia, right? So it was white Christians and Catholics who was kicking out the melanated people, or the Moors, or what they call Africans. But we know in 1200s, the only place that was called Africa was the Roman province, which is North Africa to the Iberian Peninsula. That was the only place that was called Africa at that time. So Africans came from that place. All right. When you talk about slave trade. All right. So when you know history, you can dodge this propaganda. All right. When you start understanding history, you can dodge this propaganda. All right. Ironically, him and Speed is trying to reinforce this whole native identity or the first Americans identity because they're being paid by their Jewish payers. I'm saying that, OG Tribe, peace. So they are being paid to do this because they know they know a lot of this information has been circling around for years, right? TikTok alone, we've been pushing this information for like 7 years. Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, way longer. So they see this information, they know this information, they see the books, they know we doing our genealogy, they knowing all of it. They understand it's the time of awakening, and they understand that a lot of our people is awakening up. So this is why that paid agents in the industry plants will start to kind of promote this narrative a little bit more, right? Because there's a lot of kids that follow their platforms. And like we learned and have always learned, the target is always the kids. Right? The target is always the kids. The kids are the future. So if you could keep brainwashing the future, then the future is what? Right? So what's happening, 4D Griffin, OG Tribe, peace, Benjamin in the building, walk on water, what's happening? So they do this to reinforce the narrative. But we know better than that. We know that these are Siberians. We know that these Siberians. These people can't be the first Americans. They're recessive. Look at the recessive genes. Straight hair, pale skin, narrow noses, thin lips. All of this is recessive genes. So they can't be the first anything if their genes is mutations from the dominant. Okay? So they can't be original nothing. They can't be original nothing if their genes is recessive. Come on, man. Anybody got any questions before we keep going? Peace, peace. What's that in ancient American? So I can't stand his corny ass. Man, them folks is, man, look. These people, new Hollywood. Streamers is the new Hollywood, right? The new freak offs. For real. This is the new freak offs. This man had a whole streaming live with Ray J walking around bricked up, putting it on people's shoulders and shit like that, live on stream with kids watching. He allowed that shit go on. He allowed a whole bunch of shit go on that kids shouldn't even be watching. You know what I'm saying? It's because he's an industry plant, controlled opposition. Facts. Yeah, he definitely did that. One of his homeboys woke up talking about, bro, my body is sore. I don't know what happened last night. He started laughing at him. His homeboy really looked concerned. Man, Ray J walking around and I'm waking up my body. What the fuck going on? He laughing at his homeboy. That shit ain't cool. But yeah, this is the new platforms where the initiations go on. Except for now, you can kind of start taking a glimpse and seeing it for yourself. And Diddy bopping for real. Right? You said John Calhoun created the Bureau of Indian Affairs. It's more like he sound like a white guy. All right. All right. Peace, shout out to everybody in here. He said he was. Yeah, man. That boy live stream was crazy. And the crazy thing is that TikTok was showing it. For real. That's how I found out about it. It was all over TikTok, floating around. I was like, damn, TikTok will show you Ray J bricked up. But my lives of reading books get banned. That I already let you know what type of energy field that we in when we dealing with social media, right? Anytime I go live and talk truth, read books, censored. But you can have videos of Charlie Kirk getting offed. You can see videos of Ray J walking around bricked up, harassing younger folks. That shit crazy. You know what I'm saying? Understand the type of realm of existence that you in, where truth gets punished. And if we live in a realm where truth get punished in silence, that means everything around you is a lie that is accepted. Everything that is accepted is a lie. Everything that is punished and banned and censored is the truth. Peep game. Your whole reality is inverted. Your whole reality is inverted. They inverted your whole reality starting in kindergarten. In kindergarten, they start priming your brain to invert your whole reality. Excuse me. So understand this. You already know, Benjamin. So American Indians was reclassified to colored. Right? We already know that. Right? American Indians was reclassified to colored by Walter Plecker. Reclassified to colored. The only people drinking from colored water fountains during the time of reclassification is reclassified Indians. You won't find no Africans drinking from colored water fountains. Why do I say that? Because Africans was here. Right? Your immigrant Africans was here. Not a large number. But they was here though. But you would never catch them at a colored water fountain though. Alright? Proud Seeker said, did Walter Plecker do that for Virginia or all of black folks? The Racial Integrity Act was passed for all of us. It started in Virginia. You know, most laws start in a certain place before they get spreaded. So the Racial Integrity Act started in Virginia, but it went global because all American Indians start being reclassified to colored. And then also Virginia is not what we think of Virginia today. None of these places. See, this is why I always tell y'all or teach y'all or remind y'all that when we study in history, we can't study history with modern understanding. Virginia back then is not the same Virginia of today. Right? Most of the times back then, from 1920s all the way to colonial time, when they say Virginia, they mean the 13 colonies. Because the 13 colonies was called Virginia's Company, right? Because Virginia is named after a company that was controlled by the Rothschilds and them. So the 13 colonies was called Virginia, right? And then after then, what we call Kentucky today was actually old Virginia. Before today's Virginia became what it is, the 13 colonies was called Virginia. Kentucky was called Old Virginia. And what we have today is New Virginia or Modern Virginia, you know, West Virginia and all of that. But Virginia was way bigger than that. Yeah, Virginia was like 5-6 states during these times, right? It was 13 colonies at one time. It got smaller. It was like 5 states. And then later on in history, it became like 2 states, regular Virginia and West Virginia, which West Virginia is actually east. But anyways, what's happening, Copper Princess? Peace, peace. Just being me. What's happening, y'all? Peace, peace. All right. So let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. Yes, learn. Yes, reiterate these colonial labels real quick, right? Yes, reiterate these colonial labels. Okay. Colonial labels was designed to literally erase you. Yeah, I've been going on a little bit earlier nowadays. 8 sometimes, 9 sometimes. So we gotta understand that when we read colonial stories and history and stuff, we gotta understand that the colonial labels were designed to erase you, your nationality, your ethnicity, right? The same colonial labels that people are so proud of today. I'm black, Negro, mestizo, all of that shit was created to erase your original identity. Okay. So in the Spanish, right? In the Spanish and Portuguese colonies, labels like Negro, Mulatto, Mestizo, Indio, and Ladino were not ethnic identities, but administrative categories used to control and separate people. Okay. Ladino originally meant Latinized, or someone who spoke Spanish or Portuguese and adopted Iberian customs. Enslaved Africans, but remember, Africans at this time wasn't no random Africans from the continent. Africa at this time that we're talking about is a Roman province, right? Morocco, Mauritania, Algiers, Tunisia, Tripoli, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Sicily. All of this was called Africa, okay, at this time. So the Africans who were baptized and spoke Spanish and Portuguese were often called Ladinos, right? During the Roman colonization period, right? A lot of people forget about Rome colonized that area 1 AD, right? Colonial period do not start in 1492. You can go as far back as 1 AD and learn about Roman colonization, okay? So it was the Romans who called these inhabitants, Sephardics or Moors. It was them who called them Africans, okay? And because they was colonized by Rome, they became Latinized, right? Because Sephardics or Sephardites are Hebrews or Jews. They're not Latin. But because they was colonized by Rome from 1 AD to 700 AD, they became Latinized, right? They became Latin. They started speaking Spanish, Portuguese, French, and stuff like that, right? Latin languages and Latin culture and stuff, right? So over time, Ladino became a term for acculturated blacks and Afro-Indigenous people, right? Ladino became a term for acculturated blacks, Sephardics and Moors, and Afro-Indigenous people. Before you get to a Latino, you have to understand Ladino, okay? And understand that that term also went for Afro-Indigenous people. When I say Afro-Indigenous people, your Afro-Mexicans, your Afro-Latinas, so-called Afro-Americans, right? All of these people with the Afro in front of their names are people who is a mixture of Sephardic Jews, Moors, and Indians. So they become Afro, meaning Afri or Africa, Sephardics, Moors, Iberian, and indigenous people. Okay? But their identity was later folded into mestizo or Indian categories later, erasing the so-called blackness, right? But we know blackness is a social construct, right? You can't erase a social construct. But it was erasing Negroidness, right? So there was also an erasure through whitening, right? Which you call blanqueamiento. So many colonial societies had a blanqueamiento project, right? A whitening project, pushing people of African descent, but we know that that African is Sephardics and Moors. So pushing people of Sephardic and Moorish descent to drop their identities by blending into categories like mestizo or Ladino, which later becomes Latino, okay? The further people moved away from being labeled Negro in official documents, the safer they was legally and socially. So there was a time where our people didn't want to be labeled Negro or Indian. So they would pretend to be mestizos, mulattoes, Latinos. Some of them would pretend to be fresh Africans coming over, right? So they can live a little safer, right? And legally and socially. So they would pretend to be other ethnicities instead of Negro or Indian or Sephardic and Indian. They would pretend to be other things, right? Christians, Catholics, everything like that. So over generations, that meant that a lot of so-called black Ladinos were reclassified as non-black, meaning white, which is the opposite of non-black. white. So there was a lot of, what's that in DC? There was a lot of so-called black people who were reclassified as white, even though their ancestry was Sephardic and Moor, or what you call African. So there's a lot of people called white. But a lot of people don't understand this. They don't get it. They haven't grasped this part in history. Right? They haven't grasped this part in history. So a lot of times when you're reading history or genealogy and they talk about white people, they're not really talking about white people. Those are actually dark-skinned or Negroid people who were reclassified as non-blacks, meaning white. So when you do your genealogy, you find that European, it says white, that don't necessarily mean white. Right? All right. So we're just doing a little recap this morning. We're just doing a little recap. Hope y'all don't mind a little recap. So the modern confusion of the word, besides the fact that people never heard of the word, exactly, status, not color. Status, not color. I hate when people pull up to an apartment complex and blow the horn. You just call them. Got all these buildings out here. Just call them. Just get out the car and ring the doorbell. But anyways, so the confusion, right? So the modern confusion of the word today, Ladino, which, you know, this word is pretty new to a lot of people, but in other places it's not. So today, Ladino in places like Guatemala means something closer to Spanish-speaking non-indigenous person. Basically a cultural linguistic category not tied to race. Remember, Ladino turns into Latino later on in history. So Latino is literally what they just said a Ladino is, right? Latino, basically a cultural linguistic category not tied to race. This is why you got dark skin, or what you call black Latinos, and you got white Latinos, you got Asian Latinos, you got Hindu Latinos, right? You got all these different ethnicities, races, and nationalities who is considered so-called Latino. What's happening, Gigi? But they really not. So this is where the confusion come in. All right. So because of this modern meaning, most people don't connect it back to the fact that the earliest Ladinos were African, Sephardics, and Moors, and Afro-Indigenous people who had been forced into European culture. All right. Because of the fact that because of the modern definition of the word Latino, it erases the connection to the fact that the earliest Ladinos or Latinos were so-called African, which we know is Sephardics and Moors, and their children, who are Afro-Indigenous people who had been forced into European culture, meaning Christianity or Catholicism. Okay? Meaning Catholicism or Christianity. All right, y'all follow me so far? Anybody got any questions? Any questions? Anybody follow me right now? So, we all good? Mic check 1 2 1 2. We good? We straight? Appreciate the likes, the love, the gifts, y'all. Appreciate y'all tuning in, liking the live, sharing the live. right? I just want to make sure that y'all understand it, because this information also ties us to Mexican heritage and shared history as well too. Yeah, y'all heard me right. This information ties Black Americans and Mexicans together, because whether people understand it or not, Mexicans and Black Americans have a shared ancestry and history that goes way back before colonization. See, a lot of people always like to start with slavery and shit. Well, you know, the Mexicans and Black Americans, you know, the slavery. Our connection goes way back to slavery, and most of those people like to use slavery as in the fact we owned y'all or we freed y'all and shit like that, when that's not the case. This is one of the problems with the so-called slavery narrative, is that people always want to be the dominant or top person over melanated people, and this is why they use the whole slavery thing. But when you research the books, the documents, the sources, everything like that, slavery is not what they told you mainstream. And you would be surprised that so-called YT people was the first slaves in America, right? There's plenty of books that tell you that, right? But because of modern history that's been rewritten, you dark-skinned people have became the face of slavery instead of the actual face of slavery, which would be Christian whites or white Christians and white Catholics, Ashkenaz, you know what I'm saying? But they leave that out on purpose. So, but all of these labels is a deliberate historical amnesia, right? This is deliberate, strategic. This is something that I try to put in people's minds all the time. This is deliberate. It is strategical. Your government already know this information. Your little hat people already know this information. The Vatican and Rome and the Jesuits already know this information. Other people already know this information. The only people who is still ignorant to this information, sadly, is Black Americans and what we call Latin America, because we too busy beefing with one another, or we got some animosity and racist views towards one another, when in reality so-called Black Americans in Latin America is actually more closely related and similar than you think. Most people in Latin America actually comes from so-called Black Americans. Believe it or not, this is why the culture the same. Your grandmama used to throw a shoe at you. My grandma threw shoes at us. You like up-tempo music and loud music. We like up-tempo, loud music too. You like to dance, we like to dance. You like to sing, we like to sing. Y'all like gold, we like gold. You like rims, we like rims. You like the hydraulics, we like hydraulics. You like the urban wear, we like the urban wear. Why you think in history, anytime you get Black Americans and Latin Americans together, we always create beautiful culture together? Because shared ancestry equals shared culture. All right. Hey, peep game. A lot of us got plenty cousins over there in the Caribbeans, in West Indians. So colonial and later national governments downplayed Black presence in many parts of the Americas. Okay? By redefining Latinos as mixed, right? By redefining, because remember what the first definition of Latino was. So by them redefining Latino as mixed or Hispanic, they could erase the role of African descendant people in building those societies, meaning Sephardics and Moors. By redefining what a Latino is, and you calling it mixed or Hispanic today, you are erasing the Sephardic and the Moorish, or the so-called Negro descendant people in building those societies. So the average person today doesn't know the older definition unless they've dug into colonial records like we have been doing for 7 years on this app, 10 years on Facebook, 4 years on YouTube, 3 years on Instagram, right? Almost 20 plus years, right? Unless the average person dig into colonial records, they would never know the truth. This is why we encourage people, right? Everybody that cut the camera on my side of the tracks, they always tell you what? Do your own research. You have to dig into colonial records. You have to do your census records, genealogy. You have to dig into the books in order to understand things. Because the older definitions ain't the same as the modern definitions. The modern definitions was created to confuse you and hide the truth. You got to go to older definitions, right? For an example, when they say so-called black presence and Latinos, let me show y'all what I mean by going to an older source. When you go into an older source, right? What's that in Aponti? Opnati? I hope I'm saying that right. I can't never say your name, but peace. What's that in Regal? So when we talk about going into an older, right? You want to pull out the lexico, right? This book is even Spanish itself, right? The lexico Spanish dictionary. And it says it right here that a Latino means an El Negro, right? El Negro. Or it can also mean Indio, right? As you keep reading, you got El Negro, right? You got Negros, Latinos, right? You also got Indio Latino, right? An Indian Latino, Indio Latino. I wonder who the Indio Latinos is. We call them Afro-Indigenous today, right? And Indio Latino is what we call Afro-Indigenous today. So you got Indio Latino, you got Q Habla El Español Indio, right? Negra, Negro, El Negro, Indio, Latino, right? These is just variations of the word. What's happening, Emotep? These is just variations of the word. And we know that these El Negros, who is called Latinos, are Sephardic, Saffordized. Because when you connect the dots even deeper from a Latino, it's going to tell you Latino is a Judeo-Spanish-speaking person from the Iberia Peninsula, which you call Saffordized, Sephardic Jews. So your Sephardic Jews is literally El Negros from Spain and Portugal and Iberia. Okay? All right? An Indio Latino is an El Negro, an indigenous person. Listen, before we keep reading, I just want to give y'all different variations of the same understanding. So we know that a Latino is a El Negro who is a Saffordai. So an Afro, quote unquote, Afro-Indigenous person would be an Indio Latino, El Negro Indian, or what you call Black Indian, Negro Indian, Latino Indio, Indio Latino, Afro-Indigenous, Afro-Mexican, Afro-Guatemalan, Afro-Latino. This is what an Indio Latino is. Afro-Indigenous people who descend from El Negro, Sephardic Jews, and Indians. All right? Come on. You see it says Indians that speak Spanish. Yeah, also Indians that speak Spanish, right? So how does this connect us with Mexicans? And not just Mexicans, but other Latin Americans, right? How do this connect us with Mexicans and other Latin Americans? Well, before we get into that part, I have to let you know we have to break down the social construct. All right, because they said that this was used to erase blackness. But we know black is a social construct. You can't erase blackness, right? Black is a colonial label, not a real ethnic identity. Europeans created black and white in the 15th and 17th century as a part of a racial caste system in the Americas. Before that, people identified by nations, faith, and culture. Before that, people identified by nation, faith, and culture. Before that, people identified by nation, faith, and culture. Moor, Jew, Berber, Arab, Mandinka, Yoruba, Shada, Mississippian. Okay. All right, my bad, y'all. They said they sense inactivity in my live. So, if y'all got free hands, y'all just, comment, ask questions, or engage for me so they don't be trying to take the live out, because I damn sure was talking, right? Yeah, I definitely answer questions. So before that, people identified by nations, faith, culture, right? Moor, Jew, Berber, Arab, Mandinka, Yoruba, Shada, Mississippian, etc. What's that in the Hidden Gems? Peace, peace. This is how people identified. When colonizers started mass slavery and dispossession, they collapsed all those diverse identities into one category: Negro or Black, erasing history and nationhood. You see what I'm saying? Moor, Jew, Berber, Arab, Mandinka, Yoruba, Shada, Mississippian, etc. They collapse all those identities into one category: Black or Negro, erasing history and nationhood. All right? Erasing history and nationhood. This is why they tell you black people don't have history or culture, because black people don't exist. They tell you without telling you. You just get upset when they tell you. What you mean we got culture, nigga? Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We eat cornbread and da-da-da-da-da. That's not black culture, that's Indian culture. But you don't know that, because they erased your history and nationhood when they reclassified you. They put everybody into one group. Okay? But always know and always remember this: Latinos is always Moors plus Sephardic Jews together, right? So inside the history books and in the breakdowns, when we say Latinos, we're talking about Moors and Sephardic Jews together. This is what creates Latinos. Later on, Latinos, right? This is what creates it: Moors and Sephardic Jews. And both of them are El Negros. Okay? We already know both of those are El Negros. So historically, yes, Latinos often meant people from the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, or Portugal who were culturally Latinized or Romanized, right? Because remember, Roman colonization from 1 AD to 7 AD made the Sephardic and the Moors Latin. They was Latinized because of colonization. So many Latinos were Sephardic Jews and Moors, both whom had African roots and deep ties across the Mediterranean world. African not as in the continent, but African as in Mauritania, Morocco, Senegal, Algiers, Tunisia, Egypt, Ethiopia, Somalia, Saudi Arabia, Mecca, Baghdad, Iraq, all the way over to Hindustan. Okay, deep roots. Okay, so after, what's happening, Voluchi? Peace. So after the fall of Granada in 1492, Spain expelled Jews and Moors who became Ladinos. Some converted under pressure, some, not all, some converted under pressure and became conversos or morisco. Me no black poppy, me morisco. Right? They literally tell you without telling you. Man, y'all black. Me no black, me morisco. Meaning he descend from Sephardic Jews who converted to Catholicism. Me no black, me morisco. Me Catholic Sephardic Jew. Or me moreno. More Sephardic Jew who either became Christian or not. So they tell you without telling you, but we don't understand it because a lot of the average people is trapped in colonial labeling as identities. Everybody black. You black, I'm black, we all black. Before 1600s, wasn't nobody calling themselves black. Before the 1800s, people weren't even calling themselves Africans. Sephardic Jews and Moors never called themselves African. They were called African by the Romans because the Romans conquered them. Africa and African is a Roman Greek word, right? Africa was a Roman province that Rome called Africa. And the people who was living in this province were called Africans by the Romans. But Sephardic Jews and Moors, they never called themselves African. At a certain point in time, that word ain't never even existed. Right? So peep gang, we always identify by nationality, faith, and culture. So it's actually us who's doing it wrong. Everybody else is answering the question right. Are you black? No, I'm Dominican. Or I'm Morisco, Moreno. Are you black? Nah, nigga, I'm Haitian. Are you black? Well, I'm Jamaican. Are you black? I'm Mexican. You don't identify with colonial labels. And because you identify with colonial labels is the reason why you're not recognized as a nation. So for those who believe you're going to get reparations because you're called black, you're sadly mistaken. Because reparations is for nations. All right? But we got to understand this. All right? So, one more time. After the fall of Granada in 1492, Spain expelled Jews and Moors. Some converted under pressure. Some, not all, converted under pressure and became conversos or morisco. And many were shipped into the Americas under the broad label of Ladino, which later becomes Latino. Okay? Many were shipped into the Americas, right? West Indies, South America, Brazil, North America, Florida, Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, New York, Chicago, Philly, New England, Baltimore for the English Moors and Jews, right? The Sephardic Jews and Moors who was living in England, they got shipped to Baltimore. That's why they got the accent that they have. Peep gang. Right? So Ladino doesn't just mean African slave who spoke Spanish. In a deeper sense, it refers to Afro-Asiatic peoples of the Iberian Peninsula who already had a long history before Europeans created black, right? Afro-Asiatic peoples of the Iberia, who already had a long history before Europeans created black. What's happening, Lola? Peace, peace. Right? And besides that, Africa wasn't even a continent back then. That's what a lot of people failing to realize too. Africa wasn't even a continent back then. The continent that you call Africa was not called Africa in colonial times. It was called Libya. That continent was called Libya by some people and Ethiopia by the Romans. Right? And Africa was a province or a country inside of Libya, which is what that continent is called. So if they was grabbing slaves from all over that landmass, we would have been called Libyans at that time. We wouldn't have been called Africans. For real, that continent was called Libya at that time. If they was grabbing slaves from all over that continent, we would have been called Libyans at that time, from Libya. But no, they went into Libya, which is that continent, went to the northern part of that continent called Libya, into the Roman province called Africa, grabbed the Sephardic Jews and Moors and exiled them. Because during the exile of them in the Iberia, a lot of them ran back down to North Africa to resettle. So they just grabbed them from there and sent them over here. And these was your African slaves. Okay? Remember that. So the term Africa in antiquity only applied to a Roman province in what's now Tunisia and northern Libya. The modern usage of Africa as a whole continent is late. I'm talking about like 1800s, late. Greeks and Romans didn't call West, Central, or Southern regions Africa, right? Many Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardic would have not called themselves African at all. They identified by kingdom, clan, and faith. Colonial powers later retroactively labeled them all African. Listen, colonial powers, so they letting you know that we in colonial times. Colonial powers later retroactively labeled all the Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardics as African to strip away that complexity. So when you read about African slave trade, understand that you are reading Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardic slave trade. That's who came over here. This is why your regular Africans of today don't have no history of slavery. No, I'm telling you the truth. Your modern Africans today, the reason why they don't have no memory or history of slavery and they regurgitate what Europeans told them is because they wasn't the ones being enslaved. It was specific people. Okay? So peep game. Somebody request a box. Hold on, give me 1 second. Let me run inside. chilly. You might want to get a hoodie. All right, we back. And we got a caller to the panel, just being me.
How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good. No, I just wanted to co-sign on what you're saying. Like that's like one of my favorite things to discuss because I was reading up on that and connecting the dots, dealing with a lot of the Sephardics, the Jews that were the melanated Jews that were in Europe, right? So like everything you're saying like is so spot on. I just love that topic because like they were being persecuted and they were trying to force Christianity on them while they were in Europe. And they ultimately ended up exiling them, or some of them, like you mentioned, they escaped and they were going into Africa. And a lot of them made their way into West Africa too, or put there as well. And they were trying to, and they couldn't rule over them. Like Ferdinand and Isabella, they couldn't control them from Africa because they were blending in and disappearing. So they had ended up extracting them, going back into Africa. There was an edict written, I think it was at Alhambra or something, I don't remember. But they went into Africa and extracted them out. So like if you ever go to slavevoyages.org, are you familiar with that one?
Yep.
Yeah, and they would list the names on the slave trade. And what we find is there are a lot of Jews listed on that slave trade that were brought into the Americas or brought back to the Americas.
What's that, the master teacher? Now, facts. That is true. And this is where your conversos come in at. Those who did convert over became the ones who went into Africa to extract us, because the only person who can find us is us. You know what I'm saying? So that's why they sent them in there. And then that's where they get that narrative of black people sold black people into Africa.
Mhm.
And in reality, the people who conversed over, I don't, a part of me don't blame them from converting over, because there's no telling what a person would do. I got your kids, you gonna convert to Christianity, or your kids is, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like these people had crazy ultimatums. So some people, broke under pressure and they became converted, and they did what they did because they probably was protecting the kids or whatever they had, as a parent, or just that mindset. And other people who probably didn't have kids or no ties, that were like, nah, I ain't converting, you gotta catch me, and that's where that whole dynamic was at. But when they got to the Americas, a lot of the conversos start switching on the Spanish crown, right? A little bit later, but we'll get into that history a little bit later, how a lot of them start switching on the Spanish crown later on. What's that, Swati? Peace.
Right. And that actually, when you're talking about the crown, because that's something else I was going to ask you about. Because there was another person on TikTok, and he was talking some good information, but he's like a bit loony. Like, I think he's got paranoid schizophrenia or something, I swear. But he was talking a lot of interesting stuff about us being in Europe, ruling in Europe, and then like the Powhatan Indians. Are you familiar with the Powhatan Indians?
Yeah.
And them ruling over in Europe. And I guess he said they headed up the whole Silk Road dynamic. Mm-hmm. And he was just marking their journey, and even how the 13 colonies was really belonged to us. And I think it's connected to Pocahontas, or, whatever her real name was. But I think Pocahontas is like a title, but it was connected to one of the Pocahontas Indians. And then they forced a marriage. Are you familiar with all that?
Yeah. So
I would love for you to talk about that, because he got good information, but he had paranoid schizophrenia, so he blocked me. I was like, okay.
You probably talking about Darby.
Shout out to Darby. No, his name was Greg, just Greg or something.
I know you're talking about just
you know what I'm talking about? And he's good for like 5 minutes, and then he starts, I guess someone had shut his live down. And so when I went back onto his live, when he got it back up, he started like picking out people, and he picked me, and just all like, was like, I reported him, and called me all types of names. I'm like, what the what?
Yeah, my bad. I was thinking Darvid because you said the Powhatan, and he always talks about him because those his people. But to understand that is to understand when I say Sephardic Jews, Moors, and American Indians, the same people. Mm-hmm. So when you get into the book, there's a book called The American Discovery of Europe, which happens way before colonial times even kicked off.
Mhm.
Like early 1400s, late 1300s, where American Indians from the East Coast, from Canada, the east side of Canada, all the way down to Florida and South America, was traveling to Europe and North Africa. The ones that went to Europe the ones that went to Europe became blackamoors, or some of them Sephardics, right? They just same people, they just went by a different title because folks over there spoke a different language, right? So if I was a Dutch person and you was an American Indian and you was dark skinned, I'm gonna call you a Moor because
Mhm.
that's what Moor mean. Moor just means dark skin or Negro. So these American Indians that's coming over here, these are blackamoors, so these are Moors to us. So that's where the story of the Moors coming over to Europe, helping Europeans out of the Dark Ages. Because remember, late
Right.
1300s, early 1400s is the Dark Age period, right? The Black Plague and all of that. So we came over, we helped them out of the plagues and Dark Ages and everything like that. Yada yada yada. The alchemy, cosmology, the baby making, and the Iberia. All of those American Indians.
Mhm.
If you want to be real specific. So that's where the connection comes in that he's talking about with a lot of the Indians in Europe. Because
Okay. So it's going to be in that book, American Discovery of Europe.
hmm
Okay, I was wondering where to find all that because he kept saying it was declassified and classified. I was like, okay.
now that book is is discontinued, meaning they pulled
Mm.
they pulled it from the physical library shelves. So
Hmm.
you're not gonna find it in a physical library. You're only gonna find it on the internet. Yeah,
Yeah.
internet.
He was just saying like he's got a lot of classified info or declassified information that was once classified. I don't know about that because I was trying to look up what he was saying because I believe it was true. I just couldn't find the sources. So I'll look at the book you were just talking about.
He ain't got no
But
declassified sources. It's the book. It's the book I just told you. A
yeah,
lot of these content creators be trying to make it seem like it's government classified G14.
yeah, yeah. That's how he was
And they're
sounding.
trying to make money off of you.
Yes, because he was charging people for his class and everything. Like
Yeah, join,
you know what I'm talking about? Just
subscribe
Greg.
to Los. Yeah, subscribe to Los. And then there's a Telegram, and
Hmm.
whatever book you want, he'll put it.
Oh, I
Yeah,
Just
didn't
subscribe to
know
his.
that. Oh, thank
yeah,
you. I didn't know that.
yeah. I got a Telegram. I could send you the link. I got a Telegram where I upload every single book inside my catalog there, and you can download it straight to your phone, so you ain't really gotta search.
Oh, okay. You know, what, I'm gonna tell you what, I will subscribe. You're the only person, TikTok or anything that like I be subscribing to that I will donate to because I don't know, like I respect what you do and you're respectful to people, so I love it.
I appreciate that. So for those who are new to the channel, um, I do have a Telegram. You subscribe to my channel or subscribe to my page, or you send a Cash App donation. I send you the link to the Telegram. When you get to the Telegram, all the books in all my libraries for free. I post it up there. The donations and all of that, it goes towards me writing my own books for our people to put it in a language that our people can understand. And I'm trying to do some documentaries in the future, right? Because we got tons of Pan African documentaries and hidden colors. It's time for us to have American Indian documentaries that teach the real to our people,
Right, right.
and just a lot of other stuff, just trying to help the community out, and that's where the donations go to. So for those who want to know,
Yeah. Well, I look forward to
Even,
that. And
even if you took it, I wouldn't care because we getting what we need out of it.
right. OG Tribe. I just want to respond to him real quick in the comments because he had mentioned watch Just Greg. That's the guy I'm talking about. This dude has paranoid schizophrenia. Cause he be like 1 minute teaching, next minute he be cursing out his own like audience and accusing them of stuff, and then he shut his channel down and start a new channel. Like it's
Los, can you let the master teacher up? But I wanted to say, right? So when you read scriptures, right?
mhm.
So the Hebrews, like we were in captivities, like we just go in and out of captivity. So we spread all over the, I guess, the world, the four corners of the world, and we're people of we cultivate, we
Sorry
know
about that, Los.
so we can feed wherever we go. We can feed you because we know these things. It's a feedback.
Yeah.
So what's up, master teacher? What's in it? The bar's low.
She might have to drop it.
Okay. Sorry, I had it on mute.
Okay.
Um, what up, Los?
What's in it?
Uh, in a situation, but I got something for you.
Okay.
But the Powhatan, she was talking about Jess Greg and the Powhatan. Them is my people. And Darwin is cool with me too. I'm cool with Darwin too because Darwin knows he be online, he be clowning and stuff like that, but he knows a lot about the Powhatan Confederate. That's what I am. I'm the Confederate. I'm not the nation or the bands or the tribes or none of that. I'm the Confederate. You're saying the Powhatans are your people, or are you talking about just Greg is your people? No, the Powhatan. Oh, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What did you
It
want to
was a
know
lot
about
of
him?
good information about it. I just, like he was saying, they were heading up the Silk Road. So I wanted to look more into that.
They're what?
The Silk Road.
What is that?
Google it, the Silk Road, and that's something they don't talk about a lot. The Silk Road is like a trade route where the Indians were, well, from what he says, the Powhatan Indians were going around the world feeding people because America was a
You.
breadbasket, and so they had
So
to
let me say this.
route.
I have unlocked the land.
Uh huh.
I have it all. Y'all are behind. Me and conscious signs. Me and signs of the conscious minds. We're a team. We're together. But it is for you guys to learn the history. So I would suggest that you follow me and follow Los because Los has the spiritual side and I have more of the Los is both. I'm not even gonna disrespect him. He has both. But I have like more um indigenous Indians information. Like I'm over on TikTok. I'm over on Instagram as indigenous beings. Me and Los started roughly around the same time. Well, I started before Los because I've been doing it for over 12 years now, and I think Los has been doing it for like 7 to 10 years now. So I'm Los is, me and Los is cool. We're a team. We're a team. I'm not even gonna front. But you're in the right direction. But I don't know what Jess Greg is. Jess Greg is leading you just in a just place. He so let me it's loud in my background, but that's because I'm in a place where I can't control the background, okay? But Jess Greg has some helpful information to a degree, but he's also signing you up for some class or membership to be in a separate he's trying to he wants to create another nation or something like that.
Yeah,
Another.
I don't mess with him too much. I actually don't mess with him at all. I just watched his class at one time. He was loony, but I was just curious about what he was talking about. That's all. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
listen to
trade
science
and stuff
too.
like that. Well, signs. So listen, here. I'm gonna be very frank with you. I'm the Confederate. I am. I'm the Confederate. I have Confederate on my my 17th great grandfather all the way from the beginning. Fuck it. Signs of the conscious mind says stop playing. I'm from the beginning. I'm in Egypt. It is confused you. That's because me and
So
signs have worked together. Where my ancestry, I'm at the beginning of my ancestry, my genealogy. I'm at zero here with Queen Egypt.
so P gang, y'all. P gang. P
I
gang.
already
So P
ancestry,
gang. So
which
not trying to be rude.
that signs
I
of
don't
the
want to get back to the teachings, but if y'all still inside the live, by the time I get back, I'll open up the panels.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was gonna
All right,
step
y'all
down
good.
anyway,
I
but
good.
yeah, thank
I
you.
just want to finish the recap because there's a lot of people who probably missed it.
Yeah, all right. I'm stepping down.
Oh, y'all good. Okay. I'll bring y'all back up later.
for me too.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. I doubt it.
Okay, so let's just get back to it real quick because I got a nice little bit of slides, right? And then when I get to the end, I'll bring everybody back up. What's happening, BCU? Peace, peace. So from the understanding, right? So from the understanding of it, right? When we talk about colonial history, we gotta understand that Africa was not a continent back then, right? So when they talk about they bring in Africans on, to America, they're not talking about that whole continent. In colonial times, that continent was called Libya, and the only thing that was called Africa was the Roman province. When you research the Roman province, it's going to take you, like I said, Mauritania, Morocco, Tunisia, Tripoli, even Egypt, Ethiopia, Somalia, Portuguese, Spain, Italy, Sicily, anywhere that the Romans have colonized the Sephardic Jews and the Moors, that became a Roman province because the first colonization started in 1 AD to 700 AD when it was Rome versus the Sephardic Jews. Or if you read your books, Rome versus Judah. Right? Hebrews, Israelites, right? That's the whole reason why Yahshua went inside the Roman council and flip over tables and stuff like that, right? When you start reading about Titus, Constantine, Julius Caesar, who was also a Negro, right? You start reading into all those stories and you'll start to understand. So that's why I tell people, don't throw the Bible out because you don't understand or you don't believe in it. That book is a history book, and it's also a Gnostic book as well, too. Believe it or not, right? Especially when you understand another connection to the Sephardic Jews in America is that when you learn that the Old Testament came from the Torah in the Old Testament takes place in America. And it talks about Sephardic Jews are in America, right? And a lot of Bible verses and a lot of scriptures and everything like that, you hear Israelites is wandering the wilderness. Hebrews wandering the wilderness. Inside the wilderness, they ask God to bless them with something to eat while they're on their journeys. You know what I'm saying? God gave them permission to eat quail. Quail is only indigenous to America. Okay, when you get into Noah Ark story and he's building the ark out of gopher wood, that is in Florida. When you talk about King Solomon and he building all his temples out of cedar, California, right, with the red cedar forest, the forest with the giant trees and shit, right? California and out west and all of that, right? When you understand how they are describing the landmass, you'll start to understand that they are talking about America. So once again, Sephardic Jews is from America, and they was wandering the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, right? So peep gang, understand that. So at this time, there was no continent called Africa. So the modern usage was at Niswardi, peace. So your average people who don't understand this depths, right? The modern usage of Africa is what confuses them when they talk about African slave trades. Because when you talk about colonial periods, different Africa than today. So the modern usage of Africa as a whole continent is late 1800s. Greeks and Romans didn't call West, Central, and Southern regions Africa. So that means that many Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardism would not have even called themselves Africans. But that was colonial powers who was colonizing them, called them Africans to strip away their identities in history. Okay, and when they say Iberian Moors, remember, Moor is a descriptive term, right? It's interchangeably with Negro. So when they say Iberian Moors, all they just telling you is Iberian Negroes, Negroes from Iberia, Berbers, Mauritanians, Sephardism, Israelites, Hebrews, real Jews, all right? So peep game. So the only Africans in colonial times will be Iberian Negroes or Iberian Moors, Berbers, Mauritanians, Tuaregs, and Sephardism or Sephardic Jews, Sephardi, also meaning Iberian, right? So if I ask you what is an African American, your answer should be an Iberian who was born in America. because there was no Africa in colonial times, only a bunch of Iberians coming over here. That's what a so-called African American is. An Afro-Indigenous person is an American Indian that's mixed with Iberian, Moor, Berber, or Sephardic, which creates Afro-Indigenous people. So again, you still got ties to the Iberia, and you still got ties to America. But in modern terms, in modern times and usage, people is confused. Once again, this is why modern Africans don't have a slave story, because it wasn't their people being took. It was people mainly from the Iberia and northern part of that landmass. So this why motherfuckers in Gambia and Congo and South, this why they don't have a slave story. And they regurgitate the shit that we read in McGraw-Hill book. My nigga, you got the same book we got? How did you know? Cause nigga, they taught us that already. But they don't have a story. But you know people who do got a story. Italians, Sicily, Spain, Portugal. Those people got slave stories. Some of them your cousins. I'm being real. Some of them your cousins. Right? So let me reiterate what I mean by there was no Africa. Is Alkebulan the original name of so-called Africa? No. Alkebulan is Arabic. That name came when the Arabs came to colonize. Because after the Romans colonized from 1 AD to 7 AD, the Turks, the Little Hats, and a lot of Germans and Slavic people start invading. They called it Alkebulan. But but no. Right? So, and just to let y'all know, so Alki is Arabic. Bulan is King Bulan. Right? When you understand who King Bulan is, you start getting into Chazar history. Right? So when you understand who Bulan is, King Bulan, that's Chazar history, which later becomes Little Hat people. Right? Because the Little Hat people and the Turks was cool. Before the Little Hat people became Judaic, they was actually Islamic. That's a part of their history that they erased or they kept hidden. But there's plenty of books that tell you that, right? Before they became converts, they was actually Islamic. So they rolled with the Turks in the Ottoman Empire, believe it or not. Okay? So peep game. So the Roman and Greek colonial route. From about 1 AD to 700 AD, Roman and Byzantine control, plus later Greek and Latin scholarship, helped fix the term Africa to Moors and others in the north. So Africa meant only Moors and those of the north, right? When Arabs, Berbers, and Moors dominated Iberia from 711 to 1492, Europeans already had that racialized memory from when the Romans called the Moors and the Berbers Africani Morti. So they continued to call the Berbers and the Moors and some Arabs Africani or African Marti, right? Marti just means black or Negro. So Mauritanian is actually Negro land, okay? Or Negro Terra when you say Mauritania, right? Black land, Negro Terra, etc., etc. So when the Iberian Jews and Moors were expelled or enslaved, colonial documents often called them African/Negro. Right? Appreciate the gifts, y'all. Thank y'all for the gifts. Even though that wasn't their own identity. Right? Now, if I oftenly do something, right? Appreciate that, Swarthy. Appreciate that. If I oftenly do something, right? If I'm playing basketball and I often dribble with my left hand and I oftenly shoot with my left hand, or if I go to the store because I ran out of rolling paper and I oftenly get hemp paper, what am I doing? Oftenly. Right? What is the definition of often? The reason why I gotta do this because a lot of people who be trying to debate us don't have context, clues, skills, or vocabulary. So we got to start at the basics. So if I'm oftenly doing something, what does often mean? What does often mean? If I'm oftenly doing something, most of the time, regularly, okay. So Iberian Jews and Moors were regularly called Africans and Negroes. Regularly, most of the time, were called African and Negro, even though that wasn't their identity. Peace, Comanche, was that fam? Even though that wasn't their identity, they were falsely called African and Negro. So this is why when I go back to that Lexico Hispano dictionary, Ladino also means African diaspora. So when you talk about African diaspora, and people who say to be part of the so-called African diaspora have to be colonial descendants of Africans, what they don't know is that the African diaspora and the so-called African descendants in colonial time were actually Iberian Jews and Moors, not no random Africans from Africa, because there wasn't no continent called Africa in colonial time, only a Roman province. So what is the so-called African diaspora for real then? Because when I hear African diaspora, I hear Iberian Jews and Moors who don't know their history, who don't understand their culture. And they only identify by regions and not ethnicities. My people, man, we are African slaves. Them niggas came and got us from Senegal. They came and got us from Senegal. Right? They came and got from West Africa, Senegal. But like I told you, without the Zanaga Berbers of Mauritania, there is no Senegal. And like I also showed you, if you go to Senegal, you can still see the architecture and structures of the Iberian Jews and the Moors, still to this day standing. So without Zanaga Berbers of Mauritania, there is no Senegal, because the name Senegal comes from the Zanaga Berbers. Now, a long time ago, I was teaching y'all about Zanaga Berbers of Mauritania, and I wanted y'all to pay attention to the Naga, right? Because Zanaga only means the Nagas, right? Just like how in Spanish you got El Negro. El means the, right? Z-E means the Nagas. So if we are Nagas and we are from America, how is these Berbers Nagas as well too? It's because they from America. So this is why I say Berbers, Tuaregs, and Mauritanians are not Africans. For one, Africa was a name that was put on them by the Romans. They don't even call themselves that. And as you pay attention, most Africans don't even call themselves Africans either. They know to use Africa when they hear English. But in reality, most of them still identify with what? Tribes, nations, and regions. Man, where you from? What are you? Oh, I'm Nigerian. What are you? Ah, shit, nigga, I'm Yoruba. What about you? And shit, my people Igbo. Aren't y'all Africans? I mean, yeah, you can say we Africans. But they don't even call this, they don't even call themselves that. Not in reality. Okay? So, peep game. Zanaga, the Nagas of Mauritania. Zanaga. And you know what's even deeper about the Zanagas is their ancient alphabets is very similar to Phoenician. Right? The Zanaga. Their ancient alphabet is very similar to Phoenicia. And these are Berbers. Berbers also call America Amaruk. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. The Berbers of Mauritania called America Amaruk. Where else have we heard that word from? Amaruk. Where else have we heard that from? Amaruk. When we went to the Chaldea and we was talking about the Chaldeans, who were also technically Sephardic Jews, they called it Amorica. Where have we heard that from? So the connections is there. People is just refusing to see the connections on one part because they're painting a narrative to help their, people, full-blooded Indian, whatever narrative that is. Then you have another group of people who just can't read or comprehend when we show them. But shout out to everybody that's in here who have good comprehension skills and understanding and taking the time out to learn. And it comes from a specific dynasty of Zanagas called the Almovads or the Almovuds, right? That is a dynasty. So this is why I say real Moors have a dynasty. If I tell you I'm a Moor, okay, Moor is broad. Just narrow it down. What type of Moor are you? Shit, I'm a Zanaga, Berber of Mauritania from the Almovad dynasty. Okay, what about you? Shit, I'm a Moor, but I'm Tuareg of Morocco, and I come from the Umayyad dynasty. You see what I'm saying? No different than how you would do in America. Oh, I'm an American, but I'm Shatta. I come from the Mississippian dynasty. No different. This is what they mean by people identified by nationality, faith, and culture before we even identified as black or white. Okay? That's like saying you Asian. Which Asian? Exactly. Oh, I'm Asian. Which Asian? I'm Chinese. Okay, what type of Chinese? Oh, shit, my people from the Shang dynasty. Okay. Because not all Chinese people speak Mandarin. Mandarin is just the most spoken. But that's not the only language in China. Right? Oh, I'm Japanese. What type of Japanese? Shit, I'm from the Anu. Or I'm from Nagasaki. And then you tell the tribe. Say, I think I'm a Lenape Moor, then you would be so-called Afro-Indigenous, right? You'll be part of the Lenape Indians who mixed in with the Moors. Afro-Indigenous. Since now we know what they mean when they say Africa. From Delaware. Delaware was a major Sephardic Jew and Moor ground and American Indians. Peep game. So now, how do Black Americans and Mexicans, how are we so much alike? And not just Mexicans, but just Latin America as well, right? If you speak Spanish or Portuguese or what, you know what I'm saying? Just Latin America, period, and Black Americans. How are we so connected that we don't even realize it? Because people are so racist and they don't understand history. Well, we got to start with the colonial blueprint. Spain and Portugal and later England used the same racial blueprint everywhere, right? Strip identities, Moors, Sephardics, Mandinkas, Choctaws, Nahuatl, Mayan, etc., right? Replace them with color categories, right? Color categories, right? Negro, Indio, Mulatto, Mestizo, Blanco. Reward those who participated in bloqueamiento and push those who stayed tied to the indigenous or Sephardic and Moor or African roots further away. Okay? This system turned related peoples into different races, even though they had the same ancestors. Listen closely to that. This system that we are in currently, it turns related peoples into different races, even though they had the same ancestry. How is that even possible? How can we be related but different races? right? Race categories, color categories. This system turned related peoples into different races, even though they had the same ancestors, right? How? Well, let's dive a little bit deeper on how Black Americans, Mexicans, and Latin America, or Hispanics, it's kind of the same, just different colonies. For real, we technically the same. We was just raised in different colonies. So with Black Americans, many enslaved, right? Many enslaved were labeled as Africans, quote unquote, but they were in fact Ladino, Moors, and Sephardism, brought from the Iberia and the Caribbeans into the U.S. colonies. This is what we just finding out. All the books that we've been reading, all the census records, genealogy that we've been doing, this is what we've been figuring out, niggas. My bad. But folks have been falsely mislabeled as Africans. Right? People has, what's happening, Peanut? People has been falsely labeled as Africans. There was no Africa in colonial times. Only a Roman province. So-called Black Americans come from African slaves. African slaves not as an African continent, but African slaves as in Sephardic Jews and Moors from a Roman province. Okay? So many enslaved labeled as Africans were in fact Ladino, Moors, and Sephardism, brought from Iberia, not Africa. Or since Iberia is a Roman province, that would be Africa. And the Caribbeans in the United States colony. On top of that, many already had indigenous roots, right? Especially those who was coming from the Caribbeans to the United States. They already had indigenous roots because Afro-indigenous mixing happened in the Caribbean, Mexico, and the Southeast. Y'all with me so far? Mic check 1 2 1 2. We all good? Y'all following? Any questions? Feel free to ask. That's why they keep saying Africa is a continent. Yeah. This is why they got to keep reminding people of modern terminology. Africa's a continent. For some reason, subconsciously, you call Africa a country. Subconsciously, you call Africa a country without even trying. You have to correct yourself and say that it's a continent. That ain't by mistake. That ain't by mistake. All right? Because Africa is technically is country in colonial times. So your colonial ancestors wasn't even African for real. They was Iberian. Your colonial ancestors was not Africans. They was Iberians. Falsely called Africans by the Romans and Greeks. So when they was bringing them from the Caribbeans to the U.S., many had already had indigenous roots because of the Afro-indigenous mixing that happened in the Caribbeans, in Mexico, and in the Southeast. But in America, all that diversity was collapsed into one box. Negro. Colored. All right? All of that diversity was collapsed into one box. Negro or colored. Right? Sephardic Jew, Moor, American Indian, Afro-Indigenous are the mixture children. All of us got collapsed into one box. Negro, colored. Okay? So now when we get to Mexico, all right, when we get to Mexico and Mexicans, same shit, just in Spanish, right? Same shit, just in Spanish. So in New Spain, which is what we call Mexico, Ladinos were the bridge population, right? Moors and Sephardism, who mixed with the indigenous nations of Aztecs, Mayas, Mixtecs, Toltecs, and etc. Right? Mixed with different indigenous nations. So you have one part of us when you talk about Black Americans, Moors, Jews, mixed with Arabacans, Lucayans, Caribs, Shadas, the Gullahs, the Geechees, right, the Creeks, etc., etc. You know, Mississippians. Now, when you go to Mexico, these Sephardics and Moors are mixing with Aztecs, Mayans, Mixtecs, Toltecs, etc. So over time, they became mestizos. Majority Spanish-speaking, culturally Catholic, Roman, Latinized, right? Catholic, Roman, Latinized, right? They became Spanish-speaking, culturally Catholic or Roman, but with hidden African or Jewish and Moorish roots, right? Hidden, right? Hidden. When you get to Mexico and Mexican, they're hidden. Ours is not hidden, right? We still do our culture of all openly, right? Now, theirs is hidden though. So Mexican, quote unquote, itself is a colonial national identity that covers that mixture. So they call them Mexican or Mexican, right? It's a colonial national identity that covers that mixture. All right. Now you start to understand why the Seminoles and the Geechee were so adamant by going to Mexico and helping our people. Because when you talk about Seminoles, you talk about Maroons, right? Maroon. Seminoles, Moors, Sephardics, Indians. And we know that a lot of Yamasees and Seminoles and a lot of us have Maya ancestors. So when we talk about Sephardic Moors mixing with the Maya, is no different than the Sephardic Moors mixing with the Yamasee and the Seminoles. So this is why it was easy for our people to be, hey, we need to go to Mexico to help out our brothers and sisters, fight off the Spanish crown and the Catholics. Boom, that's how that happened. It wasn't, you know, they was trying to enslave our people over there. So we went over there to help out, fought, we won, boom, independence. But because a part of their government still practiced bloqueamiento, they pushed us to the side. Because remember, these colonial labels such as Negro, Mulatto, Mestizo, etc., these colonial labels took relatives and separated them by creating different races when we all got shared ancestry. That shared ancestry is what? Sephardic, Moors, Indians. Shared ancestry, but because of colonization, we think we are different. Right? You'll be surprised you got Mexican cousins over there somewhere. Okay? Real talk. You got some cousins on the reservation too that you don't know about. Appreciate that, OG tribe. Appreciate that. So the shared ancestry that we're learning and talking about, right? Shared ancestry. So both groups, Black Americans and Mexicans, carry Ladino bloodlines. So-called African, right? So-called African, Ladino. Right? So both of us, Black Americans and Mexicans, carry Ladino bloodlines. Moors and Sephardic Jews displaced after 1492. Who is the real Jews? When you understand who the real Jews is, you will start to understand why the government is doing and what the little hat is doing today. When you understand this, who carries the Sephardi bloodline? It's not far-fetched to believe that so-called Black Americans and Mexicans are part of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's not far-fetched to understand it. Especially when they, what's that in Luke? Peace. especially when they want to try to label us anti-Semitic every time we try to reclaim our nationality. Don't they do that every time we try to reclaim our Jewness or Sepharditis? They say anti-Semitic. It's a reason for that. Now you're understanding this reason. So now, one more time, both groups, Black Americans and Mexicans, carry Ladino bloodlines. Moors and Sephardic Jews displaced after 1492, who is wrongfully labeled Africans. We both carry indigenous bloodlines as well too, right? American Indian nations of the Southeast, Caribbeans, and Mesoamerica. That's it. That's it. All that extra stuff is just there to confuse you. White man, your ancestor. European means white. And all of that shit is just there to confuse you. When you break it all the way down to the nitty-gritty bone, we both carry Ladino bloodlines, Moors, Sephardic Jews displaced after 1492, who is wrongfully called Africans by the Romans and Catholics, and indigenous bloodlines, American Indian nations of the Southeast, Caribbean, and Mesoamerica. The only difference is the colonial reclassification. The only difference is the colonial classification. In the U.S., we all was erased into Negro. In Mexico, they all was erased into mestizos. That's the only difference between us. It's just racial classification. Appreciate that. Appreciate that, GMB. That's the only difference between us. Colonial classifications. We call Negroes up here, they call mestizos down there, but we the same people. Same shared ancestry. This is why we all love each other culture so much, believe it or not. When you talk about dating outside of our so-called races, you'll learn that a lot of Black Americans and Latinos make a lot more babies than Black and white, believe it or not. And at one point in time, they had to make laws from stopping us from mixing because we was mixing at a high rate, right? So if we were mixing at a high rate, right? So if we was mixing at a high rate, right? If we was mixing at a high rate, and we both carry Moors and Sephardic and indigenous bloodlines, what does that do? If we both have the same shared ancestry, we both are mixing with each other, and we both have the same ancestral lines, you'll start to understand why they want to keep us separated, why they work so hard to keep us separated, divided, COINTELPRO'd us, and turned us against each other. Because what did we learn? Colonial classifications took relatives and created different quote-unquote races, which is a social construct, which made us think that we are different from each other as time and generations went on and went on. Okay? What's that in orange round? Peace, peace. Okay? So, all right. Okay, but I hear that, Los, but why do it feel like we so separated though? Okay, we got the same ancestry, same technically culture, and you know what I'm saying? Why do it feel so separate though? Well, we have to think in terms of today. Borders, language, and racial categories make it look like Black Americans and Mexicans are separate people, when in reality we're not. One just speaks Spanish and the other one speaks Ebonics. That's it, for real. It make it look like we're different people, but we're not. One speaks Spanish or Spanish Creole, because believe it or not, you'll be surprised, a lot of Mexicans ain't really speaking Spanish. A lot of them speaking Spanish Creole, right? Santeria, right? Voodoo, right? A lot of them speaking Spanish Creole, believe it or not. So they speak Spanish Creole, and we speak different variations of our Creole, right? English Creole, which is Ebonics, AAVE, right? French Creole, with Louisiana and Haiti, right? You go to Puerto Rico and Cuba, they speak Spanish Creole. You know what I'm saying? Or Judeo-Spanish, which is another terminology for Ebonics. That's it. We just speak different variations of the same language. Borders, racial categories, all of that makes it look like Black Americans and Mexicans are two separate people, but we are actually the same people. But the deeper you go, the more it's clear we are branches of the same tree. Right? The deeper you go, and trust me, we all went deep right now, from books, genealogy, census records, everything, right? This is the deepness that they talking about. The deeper you go, the more it's clear we're branches of the same tree. This why you'll find Afro-Mexicans, remember that Afro, right? Iberian, Afro, Alfri, Iberian, Sephardic, Jews, Moors, right? Mexicans being indigenous people. This why you'll find Afro-Mexicans in Guerrero and Veracruz and Oexia who look like Black Americans, because those identities split only under colonial labels. The only thing difference between us and our Afro brothers and sisters is colonial labels. Same people. Afro-Latin, Afro-Latina, Afro-Hispanics, and Black Americans, who was called Afro-Americans at this time. Same people. That's why the reason why we look the same, because we are the same. For real. The reason why we look the same is because we is the same. Only thing is just colonial labels, the different colonies that we was born in. That's the only difference. We was born in different colonies. Just like you and your cousin is closely related, but you was born in Georgia and he was born in Chicago. Right? Or you was born in Florida and your cousin born in California. So y'all accents would be the difference, right? Your cousin born in Cali, his culture will be different from his other cousins born in Florida. He'll be raised Cali culture, right? Dickies, high socks, accent. His cousins will be from Florida with a whole different accent, whole different way of dress and style. But if you look hard enough, you would still find the connections between your cousins in different spots that lets you know that y'all the same people. You just gotta look. You just gotta look. We're gonna let it breathe for a second. We'll catch up in the comments. What's that in Geechee, man? Peace, peace. 216 in the building. They speak with such a very interesting accent. So the way Dominicans speak Spanish and the way Puerto Ricans speak Spanish, Spanish is so different. Yeah, it's all different. Spanish Creole, different variations of Spanish Creole. They were just as lost as us in Spanish class. Nah, for real. Man, my sister took Spanish class. You'll be surprised how many of them failed Spanish. Because Spanish class was teaching you like modern proper Spanish. Just like how we was taught the proper English. Same thing. But because of our Creole-ness and our ancestry, is we don't speak, with the proper sense. So yeah, they was just as lost as us in Spanish class. I took French. A lot of people was, you'll be surprised how many people actually caught on to French. So many people stole different parts of us. The Jews, Native Americans, most Latin Americans, etc. Scots, Scottish, Brits, British, Jews, Jewish. Yeah, Moors, Moorish. Yeah, same thing. Wow. That's why people are waking up and calling themselves all these names. Yeah. Exactly why everybody waking up and calling ourselves all these names. This is why when we say Yeah, you also got Castilian Spanish as well too. Facts, facts. Yep, some of them speak that as well too. So this is why when we say that we ain't black, a lot of people whose third eye isn't open, they don't get it. They think we're being, well, I mean, technically, me personally, I am anti-black. I am anti-social construct because none of us is black, right? That terminology was put on us in colonial times. You know, we're not Africans. That was another colonial label that was put on us from the Romans, right? We identify by nations, faith, and culture. Right? So all of these are misnomers that was placed on a specific group of people who actually descend from America. You did poorly in French class? Ah, shit, I passed French class with, look, when it was time for me to peak, when I got to high school and I had to pick a foreign language to learn, I'm already part Haitian and Geechee. So I definitely took that French class. For real, I definitely took that French class. This shit was a breeze. I breezed past that motherfucker with an A plus. With an A plus. French class was mandatory in Louisiana. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a Haitian failing French is wild. I hate to say it, a Creole person failing French is wild. Why do you think we're the only ones who refer to ourselves as black and African American? Yeah. They should be teaching Creole. Well, they should, but they won't, because we got to understand what the education system really is, right? The education system is really put there to erase your identity. So we can't, and by them banning Creole back in the 1800s and early 1900s, which actually stripped a lot of states who used to teach Creole as a mandatory class, it stripped a lot of us from that because Creole was too close to the truth of who we really was. You know what I'm saying? Because once you understand Creole and what makes Creole language, you'll understand that you are a descendant of Sephardic Jews, Moors, and American Indians. That's what creates Creole and the Creole dialect and accent that we all speak today. The same dialect that I'm speaking with you today that people call country or southern or whatever. All of this is literally your Sephardic Jew and Moorish ancestry with a little bit of a lot of bit of American Indian tied to it. But again, these are the same people from America though, right? They all from America. I don't never want y'all to forget that. These people are from America. All right. So post this up here real quick while we still dialoguing. If anybody want to donate to the channel, I'll put that up here for a quick little second. But y'all starting to understand this part in history though. It's starting to make sense why they treat you the way they treat you. Do it make sense why they created the black codes and all of this stuff? Because the black codes was strictly for Sephardic Jews, right? The code Nayar was literally for Sephardic Jews, but mainstream research would tell you that it was for African Americans and shit like that. Peep game. They telling you without telling you. They hiding your identity behind the African terminology. They're hiding your identity underneath African. They're hiding your identity under a lot of colonial labels. And once you start peeling those layers back and you start getting to the root of it, okay, Sephardites, who biblically are known as Israelites, Moors, who are Mauritanians, Berbers and Tuaregs, right, and American Indian. This is why I say the European and the African is the same person. When you do your genealogy, the European is not a white person. The European is Sephardic and Moors. That's literally what the European is in your genealogy. So when you do your genealogy and you see white and shit like that, don't, oh my God, I'm mixed with a white person. That's not what that is. That is a status that lets you know, okay, these people are original descendants of Europeans or Europe or Iberians or Sephardites, right? Free white persons at first, and then they became free colored persons or free black people later on, right? When they got reclassified again. So that European in your family tree that you done found right along with your Indian is Iberian and Indian. All right. This is why you haven't found no African in your family tree. Because the so-called African is the European. And the European is the so-called African. But these aren't the basis of the identity, right? When you peel back another layer, these people was Sephardic Iberian Jews and Moors who was being exiled from Europe, who came to America and mixed with the American Indians and created Maroon communities, Creole societies, right? They started creating all these things and communities and villages and everything. Okay? That's who that is. So you got royalty on both sides. Believe it or not, you got royalty on both sides. Yeah, when you subscribe to my channel, or if you want to send a Cash App donation with your username so I know who sent it, I inbox you my Telegram link so you can join my Telegram. And once you get into the Telegram, you'll have access to my whole library that you can download to your computer or phone. Every single book that I read, you can download it to your laptop or phone. So you could either subscribe to the channel for $3.99, or you can send a Cash App donation. I learned that some of the people they say were from places like France are from LA territory. Yeah, that's also another way of reading the genealogy too. Right? Some of these people don't really be from like France or England for real. A lot of them be from right here, right? Because a lot of those places, right? New Spain, New Iberia, New France, New England, New Dutch, New Holland, right? All of these things. So sometimes in the genealogy, it won't even say America right there. They'll probably say French or France, and that means for New France. Or they might say Iberia or New Iberia, and that means somewhere in the Louisiana region, right? I think South Louisiana was called New Iberia, right? They say New Spain or Spain or something like that, and most times they talk about Mexico and the Mexican territory and all of that. So yeah, that's also another key thing, learning how to read the genealogy, understanding the timelines and the time frames of which words and territories was used. And also understand that certain places overseas wasn't named those names until late 1800s, early 1900s when they flipped the maps around. So a lot of those places is actually from over here. You know what I'm saying? That's another giveaway that a lot of this story is, you know, one reason why you're not going to find a lot of slave ships, or if any at all, is because You know, most people ain't never leave America. They just went to different territories in America. You know what I'm saying? Your African slave trade is literally Iberian Jews and Moors being exiled in 1492. That's literally what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. A lot of them came through Canada and came down. Some of them went through. Some of them left the Iberia, came over Canada, and went down, like I mean, on land or the coast, and they ended up in the Caribbeans. And from the Caribbeans, they branch out. Some of them was already dropped off on the coastline of the mainlands as they was making their way to the Caribbeans, right? So there's a whole story that they telling you backwards, right? They want you to think that Columbus left the Iberia and went straight down to the Caribbeans, but he used the Viking Norseman map. The Vikings came to America back in 900 AD and before, and they went through Greenland, Iceland. They came down Canada. From Canada, they entered what you call the United States, or the northern regions, right? And then they set up little colonies there, but they didn't last too long. And Columbus used this same map. When you leave the Iberian, you can go straight on over across to Canada. You know what I'm saying? And from Canada, you can come all the way down, and you can go with the current, not against the current. So that's the current he went. And then, as they are going, this ship full of Iberian Jews and Moors, they just dropping them off. Boom, 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 as they go down. Do, 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 do. You know what I'm saying? So, understand that part of history as well, too, right? Nova Scotia, Scotland, yeah, facts. So, as we just learned, there is no difference between Black Americans and Mexicans. All right? Well, 1492, yeah. So, as we just learned, there's no difference between Black Americans and Mexicans, or Afro-Latinos, or, you know what I'm saying? We the same people. The only thing that separates us is borders, language, and racial categories. And they did the borders and language and racial categories to make it look like Black Americans and Mexicans are separate people. But the deeper you go, the more it's clear that we are branches of the same tree. Sephardics, Moors, Indians. Nothing more, nothing less. So yes, it's not far-fetched at all, right? It's not far-fetched at all. Black Americans and Mexicans share Ladino and indigenous ancestry, just sort into different boxes by colonizers, right? It's not far-fetched that Black Americans and Mexicans, or Black Americans in Afro-Latin communities are related. It's not far-fetched at all that we the same people are related. The only thing difference is the colonial boxes that we was put in. That's it. Once a lot of people understand that history, that 13% goes up to like 95%. Nah, for real. Once we all understand that history, that 13% so-called Black population, it's not really 13%. It's more like 80. It's like 75, 80, maybe 90 on a good day. Because you have to incorporate, what's that in JIT? That means you have to incorporate our Afro brothers and sisters, our Afro Mexicans as you call them, our Afro Latin communities from the Caribbeans, South America, the East Indies. You got to incorporate the Black Canadians. When you add up all our numbers together, we are not the minority of this landmass. And the Indians ain't never go nowhere. They still here. The Sephardics and the Moors ain't never go nowhere. They still here. We just call ourselves Black people today. And we call our culture Black culture. And we call our villages Black communities. The original people still here. We just identify with wrong labels of colonial times, which was created to separate us in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So peep game. Appreciate that, OG. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. This is why they work so hard to keep us separated. They work so hard to keep us separated. Because the moment that we all unite, Black Americans, Afro-Mexicans, Afro-Latinas, you know, so-called Afro-Canadians, once we all wake up and start unifying and realizing that we are the same people, just different branches of the same tree, man, look, their worst nightmare becomes reality. Right? Think about the economic gain that we can have if we start doing business with our brothers and sisters. If we start doing business with our brothers and sisters, and our brothers and sisters start doing business with us, imagine the economic gain that we'll have overnight. We don't need nobody but us. But we have to break the barriers of the colonial mindset. We have to break racism and believing in race, because those is the only things that's keeping us from uniting and thinking that we are different. And we are not different at all. You know, it's the same people. So anyone that got reclassified as our people, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Most of us who got reclassified are the same people, right? And the only people that got reclassified, because reclassification is a form of ethnocide, right? Ethnos meaning nation and nationality, side